Deep beneath the quiet ground of Oak Island, something unexpected was waiting. For years, this area had been listed as a low-chance zone. Reports showed nothing special there, and most experts believed the ground was simply untouched soil with nothing unusual below it. But that idea changed in a single moment when the ground-penetrating radar showed a shape that froze the entire team. It was not random, it was not natural, and it was not something that happens on its own. The screen revealed a perfect rectangle sitting at a depth of 9.4 meters with straight sides and sharp corners that looked far too clean for nature to create. The radar crew fell silent. Rick stared at the screen with a calm but serious look. He knew the island well, and he had studied hundreds of radar readings over the years. Natural formations on Oak Island are always messy, curved, or scattered, but this rectangular cavity looked like it had been designed by human hands. The metal density reading jumped unusually high, to around 7.8 to 8x, which is something that only happens with heavy iron or ancient alloy. Rick's quiet words made everyone stop. He said, "Guys, this isn't natural." Right after that, the air at the site changed. A strange tension settled in. The crew understood that something hidden for centuries might finally be coming into view. As the drill moved deeper, the soil stayed normal for a while. Brown clay, small stones, and the usual compact dirt Oak Island was known for. But then something different appeared. The drill hit a patch of dark gray soil that felt tight and unusually hard. It was so compact that it almost felt like stone, but it was not stone. It was soil that had been pressed on purpose. Dr. Spooner looked closely at the sample and said something that made everyone's blood rush. He said, "This is a sealed layer. Someone pressed this down on purpose. Someone didn't want anything under it to be found." That single line changed the whole mood. Archaeologists explained that ancient cultures used such sealed soil layers to hide chambers, secret rooms, or storage vaults. This meant the crew wasn't digging into a random place. They were digging into something someone had protected on purpose long ago. The soil readings also showed air pockets below the seal, meaning there was an empty chamber under the layer. This was extremely rare, and it suggested something important was buried beneath. A few feet later, the team uncovered a stone slab. It wasn't an ordinary stone. Its surface was smooth, its edges sharp, and it looked like it had been cut with great care. When they brushed the dirt away, lines began to appear on the stone. At first, everyone thought they were cracks, but the more they cleaned, the clearer it became. These weren't cracks. They were symbols. Rick was the first to say, "Guys, these are markings."
Marty moved closer and said something that shocked everyone. He said, "These look like runes, Viking runes." The crew could not believe it. Viking runes in North America were extremely rare. Only a handful of disputed objects had ever been found. But these symbols were carved deeply, clearly, and in a style that matched Viking patterns from the 10th and 11th centuries. One symbol stood out, a triangle between two lines that was known as a protection rune, used by Viking explorers and royal families. This kind of symbol was never carved casually. It was used on important items, vaults, or objects tied to powerful people. The crew began to realize that they weren't just digging into a simple chamber. They might be standing over a Viking vault, a vault locked and sealed many centuries ago. The thought alone was enough to make everyone nervous. If this was real, history books would need to be rewritten. The digging continued carefully. The drill soon hit something hard, and this time it wasn't stone. The metal drill bit made a sharp, loud metallic clang that echoed through the ground. The machine readings spiked again to numbers that almost never appear naturally. Everyone looked at each other with confusion and fear. There was metal down there, a lot of it, and very old. Suddenly, the magnetic field sensors around the site began giving out small pulses. These pulses were unusual and only happened when there was trapped air behind a thick metal surface. It was the same type of signal found behind sealed doors in ancient sites. The crew's whispers spread quickly. Was it a metal door? A vault? Some kind of ancient storage chamber? It was impossible to say, but whatever it was, it had stayed untouched for centuries. The drill was lowered again at a different angle. Everyone expected more metal, but something unexpected happened. The drill suddenly dropped about 14 inches in a single instant. The operator yelled out that it had fallen into a hollow space. A loud, deep echo returned from the cavity below. It was the unmistakable sound of a large, empty room. Everyone froze. This was no small chamber. It was a full structure. Dust clung to the drill bit when it was pulled out. There were shiny particles mixed with the dirt as if it had scraped against carved stone or metal. The hollow echo repeated, confirming that the chamber below had smooth walls and plenty of empty space. Rick whispered, "We just broke into something old." The team sent a small fiber optic camera through the gap. The footage was dark at first, and then, as the operator slowly swung the camera, they could see shining surfaces and strange patterns carved into the stone and perhaps metal, filled with dust. But then, a faint golden shine appeared. Everyone leaned closer. The shine looked like metal, maybe even gold. It was too early to say, but the reflection was clear and deep. When the camera moved across the chamber, it revealed carved stone walls, geometric patterns, symbols, and what looked like a locking mechanism made of metal bars. Even after centuries underground, the carvings looked clean and protected. The symbols were clearer than anything found on the surface. The camera captured something else that made everyone uneasy: the wolf head symbol used by elite Viking families, a sun design that was known as the Sun of Protection, and a pair of crossed serpent symbols used only by Viking kings or high-ranking warriors. These symbols weren't just random art, they were warnings. The deeper the camera went, the more it became clear that this chamber was not just a place to store treasure. It was a vault that belonged to someone powerful, someone who wanted their secrets hidden from the world. For a moment, everything was quiet. But then something strange happened. The ground vibration meter started blinking. The site was silent, but the machine reacted as if something inside the chamber was shifting. It was a pressure change, a sign that air trapped for centuries was moving. Some crew members said quietly that it almost sounded like breathing. No one wanted to believe that, but the sound was unsettling. Dust rose from the ground, and the camera signal glitched for a second, suggesting an electromagnetic disturbance. Dr. Spooner said that sealed chambers can react like this when their air finally escapes. Still, the entire crew felt chills. Something ancient was waking up. But before they could make sense of the situation, loud engines came from a distance. 4 black SUVs without plates rushed toward the site. No warning, no messages, no radio call, they simply arrived. When the doors opened, several unknown officials stepped out. They wore black jackets, dark glasses, and serious expressions. Without introducing themselves, one of them raised a hand and gave a sharp order. "Stop all digging. Step away from the site." The crew was stunned. Cameras were ordered to shut down. Someone even demanded that the last 10 minutes of footage be deleted. Rick was furious. Marty demanded to know who they were. No answer came. The officials acted as if they had full control of the place. They took Rick and Marty into a closed tent with documents that looked classified. They said the chamber might fall under restricted artifacts, a term that confused the crew. They hinted that something in the vault could be dangerous or sensitive. They wanted control of the site. After the officials left, the team was shaken. Some wanted to stop. Others said stopping would bury the truth forever. Arguments broke out. Tension grew. But then the radar team rushed back with new readings. They discovered something even deeper, another chamber below the first. A second fault, stronger metal readings, a curved structure, maybe a dome. The team realized they were standing over a double-layer vault. The outer vault was just the beginning. The real treasure, the real secret, might be in the deeper chamber. The crew made one small test, a light twist of the drill near the edge of the outer vault. A cracking sound echoed below. Dust rushed upward. A cold, ancient wind pushed through the gap. Everyone stepped back. This was centuries-old air escaping into the world. It sounded like a door opening after 600 or maybe 1,000 years. Rick stared at the widening gap and said softly, "If this is the outer vault, what is inside the real one?" The air in the chamber below smelled metallic and ancient. The vault had started to open. The deeper chamber readings were stronger than ever. The discovery was becoming bigger than anything Oak Island had seen before. The story was far from over. Something powerful and forgotten was waiting below. And now the final question remained. What lies inside the deeper Viking vault? As the workers kept removing soil near the edge of the area, the ground became darker and more solid. It did not look like normal earth. It looked as if someone had placed this soil here on purpose. It was heavier and more compact. When the team checked it closely, they found signs that it had been moved or disturbed many years ago. This made the crew even more curious. They stopped their machines and took time to inspect the spot. Everything about it suggested that something big was hiding underneath. They brought in more tools to help lift the heavy soil. The workers also used metal detectors to scan the area. Soon, the detectors began to beep. The signals were consistent and strong. Something large and metallic was definitely buried under the surface. The team marked the area and began clearing around it carefully so they would not damage anything hidden below. After several minutes, the top of a wooden structure started to appear. But this wood did not look like regular wood. It looked extremely old and dark. When the team tested it, they realized it was made of oak. This was a powerful sign because oak wood lasts a very long time and was commonly used in ancient constructions. The workers brushed off more dirt, and then the team finally saw it clearly. It was a wooden wall. The wall was buried deep and tightly built. It seemed as if it had been placed there for a very important reason. The crew thought they were looking at something like the money pit, but the shape of this structure did not match the original design of the money pit. It looked more like a tunnel or a hidden room. It was unlike anything they had uncovered before. The excitement grew.
Everyone on the team felt they were standing above a major discovery. They brought in the camera crew to record everything so they would not miss any detail. After clearing more of the soil, they exposed enough of the structure to notice something unusual. On the side of the wooden wall, they found marks. These marks were not from machine tools. They were not from modern builders. They were cut into the wood by hand. The shapes were strange. They were symbols, but they were not English. They were not French either. They looked almost like runic symbols, the kind used by ancient Norse explorers. This shocked the entire crew. Many of them had never seen symbols like that before. The workers took close-up images of the markings so experts could study them later. The more they looked at the symbols, the more it confirmed that the structure was far older than they expected. But the question remained: who put it there and why? As they kept digging, the wooden wall eventually opened into a small passage. The passage was dark, and the air coming out of it was cold. The space inside seemed untouched for centuries. The crew inserted a small camera to see what was inside. The camera showed a narrow tunnel leading downward. It was supported by thick oak beams, and the construction looked stable despite its age. The team paused for a long moment before making any decisions. Rick and Marty both stood at the edge of the tunnel and talked about the next steps. They did not want to rush and risk damaging something of great value. They also wanted to make sure the workers were safe before entering the hidden space. After some discussion, they decided to start widening the entrance so they could send a person inside. But before anyone entered, they used a gas detector to test the air inside the tunnel. They did not know if the air was safe to breathe. When the machine showed normal readings, they felt more comfortable moving forward. Still, they acted carefully because ancient structures sometimes collapse without warning. They removed more soil from the top of the tunnel and secured the walls with support beams. Finally, the entrance was wide enough for a person to crawl through. One of the workers volunteered to go inside with a small flashlight and a camera. The rest of the team waited outside, watching the video feed on a monitor. As the worker crawled into the tunnel, the camera revealed more details. The wooden beams were thick and perfectly aligned.
Shaped. Some parts showed signs of burning or charring, which added more mystery. Why would someone burn wood inside a hidden tunnel? Did it have a purpose, or was it a sign of past damage? A few feet deeper into the tunnel, the worker reached a corner. There he found more symbols carved into the wood. These symbols matched the ones found earlier. They looked strange and ancient, with sharp lines and angles. The worker touched the carvings gently and said that the wood felt extremely old, almost brittle. As he continued forward, the tunnel widened slightly. Dust filled the air. Each movement stirred particles that had settled untouched for hundreds of years. When the worker shined his light across the floor, something shiny caught the reflection. It appeared to be metal. The team watched closely from the monitor. The worker moved toward the shiny object. It turned out to be a rusted iron ring. The ring was attached to a large wooden panel that looked like a hatch or a door. The wood was dark, heavy, and reinforced with metal bands. The team outside grew excited again. A hatch underground could mean something important was hidden below it. The worker tugged on the ring gently. The hatch moved slightly, but it was stuck. The worker said he needed help to lift it. Rick and Marty decided they would need to widen the tunnel more before attempting to lift the hatch. They did not want to risk injuring the worker or damaging the structure. The team pulled him out carefully. Then they spent the next several hours clearing soil and reinforcing the tunnel so they could reach the hatch safely. It took time, but everyone believed it would be worth it. Soon the tunnel was wide enough for 2 men to enter. Rick and Marty chose 2 experienced workers to go in together. They carried tools to help lift the hatch. As they reached the panel, they placed their equipment around it and tried again. This time, the hatch lifted a little more. When they finally broke the seal, a deep echo came from beneath it. It sounded like they were opening a chamber. When they pushed the hatch fully open, a strong rush of cold air came out. The workers leaned forward and pointed their lights into the dark space below. What they saw made them freeze. There was a staircase leading down into a deeper room. The staircase was made of wood, but the walls around it were stone. Carefully placed stones, shaped and fitted by hand. The team outside grew silent as they watched the video. The whole structure looked far older than anything they had seen on Oak Island before. Rick whispered that this might be the discovery they had been searching for all these years. But the most shocking moment happened next. At the base of the stone room, the flashlight revealed something large and rectangular. It was covered in dirt and dust, but clearly shaped by human hands. The object was made of heavy wood and metal. It looked like a large chest. A chest big enough to hold something important, something valuable, something ancient.
When the workers cleaned off some of the dirt, they found that the chest was covered in metal bands and decorated with carved symbols. These symbols were the same runic marks seen earlier. The crew stared at the screen in disbelief. They knew exactly what they were looking at. It was a vault, an ancient vault, a vault that looked Viking, and it had been hidden deep beneath Oak Island for centuries. The workers stared at the chest for a long moment. No one spoke. They could not believe what they were seeing. The chest looked untouched, as if it had been sealed and hidden by someone who never expected it to be found again. The carvings were clear even under the dust. The metal bands were strong, and the corners were reinforced, showing that the builders wanted this vault to survive for a very long time. Rick and Marty were speechless. They knew Oak Island had a long history of strange finds, but nothing had ever looked like this before. They gathered closer to the monitor as the workers inside the chamber slowly moved around the vault. The air in the room seemed heavier now. It felt as if the weight of history was pressing down on them. The workers did not touch the chest at first. They walked around it, shining their lights along the stone walls. The stones were carefully shaped and arranged in layers. They were not loose or broken. This was professional construction, far too advanced for random pit builders. The team believed the structure had been built by people who knew exactly what they were doing. One worker noticed that the corners of the room had small wooden supports. These supports were cut cleanly and placed evenly. This was not a natural space. Someone had built it like a small underground hall. The room felt old, but its design was clever. It was built to stay hidden and protected. When the workers finally returned their attention to the chest, they examined the metal locks on it. The metal was rusty, but the locks were still attached tightly. They looked complex, not like simple wooden latches. One worker pointed out that the metalwork style did not look modern at all. It looked ancient. The runic symbols carved into the chest added even more mystery. The symbols were arranged in lines, maybe forming words or messages. Some were simple shapes, while others were more detailed. The team guessed these symbols could explain what the chest was contained. But no one could read them yet. Rick and Marty called for photographs of the symbols so they could send them to experts later. They wanted to make sure nothing was misinterpreted. At the same time, they also wanted to know if they should open the chest now or wait. The moment felt important, and they did not want to make a mistake. The workers inside the chamber waited for instructions. The air was cold and still. Even the sound of their breathing echoed off the stone walls. They looked up toward the camera and waited. After a long discussion, Rick and Marty agreed they needed to open the chest carefully. This was the biggest find they had ever made on the island. But they also knew the chest might be fragile after being underground for so long. They told the workers to check the air again, secure the chamber walls, and then try to open the chest slowly. The workers gathered their tools. They brushed more dirt off the top of the vault. The wood underneath looked black and aged. When they pressed gently on it, the wood felt hard and firm. It was old, but still strong. This made everyone more confident that the chest might open without breaking. The workers began working on the metal lock. They tried to lift the latch with a small tool. The latch resisted at first. It had been sealed tightly for many years. The workers tried again, applying more pressure. Finally, the latch cracked and released. The sound echoed around the chamber. One lock was open. Now only one remained. The workers moved to the second lock. This one looked older and more brittle. They worked slowly so they would not break the metal and damage anything inside. After a few minutes, the second lock gave way. The chest was now unlocked. Everyone outside the chamber held their breath. The workers placed their hands on the lid and lifted it slowly. The wood creaked loudly. The lid rose just a little, then a little more. Dust fell from the sides as the lid moved. The inside of the chest remained dark at first. As they lifted the lid fully open, the workers stepped back to shine their lights inside. The crew outside leaned closer to the monitor. At first, the chest looked empty, but as the workers adjusted their flash